Here are 5 amazing board games that play great with just 2 players. In no particular order, the first game on my list is Raptor. This is a 2-player only game where one player will play as the raptors and the other player will play as the scientists. The raptor player is trying to either kill all the scientists or have 3 baby raptors escape from the board. The scientists, on the other hand, are trying to get their hands on the raptors, and they win if they manage to capture 3 of the babies or manage to shoot the mother raptor 5 times. Now, as you can imagine, the game plays very differently whether you're playing as the raptors or the scientists, and each side has many different possible actions and effects to choose from. The board itself is double-sided and modular, so that means each game will be set up differently and it feels unique every time. In a round, cards are played and revealed simultaneously from each player's hand, meaning there's very little waiting around and games always flow nicely. Depending on which card you play, you'll either earn the special effect from that card or be given a number of action points to move your figures around the board and perform your character-specific actions. Cards played are not immediately reshuffled into the deck. They remain visible to all players, so there's a wonderful element of strategy and predicting your opponent's next move based on what they've done already. Games last around 30 minutes and can be pretty intense and competitive. I'm a big fan of Raptor and definitely recommend you try it out for 2 players. Next up is an absolute classic of the board game world, and that is Carcassonne. This game is simple, it's easy to teach, and it makes a great gateway game to novices of the hobby. I enjoy it the most as a 2-player game, but it does work really well up to 5 players, and there are also countless expansions and spin-offs that you can explore as well. The game starts with just a lonely tile at the centre of the table. Players take turns drawing tiles at random and placing them down one at a time, thereby gradually building and expanding the world itself. The features on all sides of the tiles must always match up. So for example, a road must always connect to another road, but can never go directly into a city tile. Each player has a small number of meeples that they can place down on the tile they have just played. You earn points according to the size of the feature your meeple is in. For example, a 5-tile long road will score you 5 points. However, you have to be very careful because you do not get your meeple back until that feature is completed, so you have to balance your use of meeples very carefully. Your opponent can also find ways to hinder you and even invade your areas, and therefore there's a big potential for competition and stealing points from each other. I love seeing the beautiful and colourful world slowly expand, and the fact that this is a more peaceful and slow-paced game that anyone can enjoy. Another game that for me is best with 2 players, but works really well with up to 4 players as well, is Everdell. Now, my partner and I are absolute suckers for this game because of its forest animal theme. It's absolutely beautiful. The artwork and the components are really, really stunning. It's the longest and biggest game on my list, actually, and a 2-player game takes about an hour, sometimes a bit more or less. Everdell is a worker placement engine building game where players take turns sending out their meeples to collect various resources and using those resources to add critters and constructions to your own city. Cards typically have extra bonuses and triggering effects, so a well-planned city will grant you more and more benefits as the game progresses. It can be really challenging to make choices between all the possible actions and to carefully balance the use of your precious resources. There isn't too much player interaction in Everdell, but for me this adds to the beauty and joy of just relaxing and watching your forest city come to life. And for me, the theme and the artwork really makes this game, and it's why I enjoy playing it so much. 4th on my list is the 2-player only version of one of my favourite board games of all time, and that is Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Duel is the 2-player specific version of Seven Wonders, which I highly recommend you check out, especially if you're playing with 4 players or more. Players take turns to draw cards from the centre and build up their powerful civilization. You compete to earn victory points, but what you choose to prioritise will depend on your playstyle and the wonders you've selected at the beginning of the game. Do you go for an all-out military victory, potentially leaving lucrative resource cards to your opponent? Do you go for yellow commerce cards that allow you to trade resources cheaply and amass a small fortune of coins? Players can only select a card that is face up on the table, and only when cards are freed up do they get flipped over, so you always run a risk and have to think carefully before potentially revealing that all-important card that your opponent's been waiting for. Seven Wonders Duel is an incredible game of decision-making, patience and strategic planning, not to mention the cards are incredibly cute and beautifully illustrated. The final game on my list is another two-player only game, and that is Air, Land and Sea. A really small box, you can take it practically anywhere. Inside are just 18 cards and some victory tokens, but despite that, this has got so much strategy and so much depth to it, and the two players are going to be fighting over control of various theatres of war. You play cards from your hand down to its matching theatre. You start with a hand of only 6 cards, and you don't draw any more throughout the round, so you have to be really careful which theatres you prioritise and in which order you place your cards. Some cards, such as the heavy tanks, are the most powerful with a strength of 6, but they don't trigger any special effects. The support card, on the other hand, is only strength 1, but it gives you +3 strength to each adjacent theatre. A brilliant mechanic is that you can choose to play your cards face down into any theatre, thereby keeping your opponent guessing as to what it is and what your tactics are. There are many effects that allow you to flip cards over, including your opponent's cards, and therefore you can trigger or negate lots of special abilities, and that's where the player interaction comes in. But maybe the best feature of this game is the ability to surrender a round if things aren't quite going your way. Your opponent receives the fewest victory points depending on how early you surrender, so sometimes it's a really sensible tactical decision to just give your opponent that round so that you can focus on the next rounds that come up and winning those. I love the theme of this game. It sets up in virtually no time at all, and it's just provided endless strategy even after many, many hours of playing, despite there being just 18 cards. I really, really enjoy Air, Land and Sea every time I play it. So those are 5 amazing two-player games that I definitely recommend you check out. I would love to read in the comments if you've played any of them and what you think. And please do write down there if there are any other two-player games that you would recommend that others should know about.